Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. All right. So greetings from the Dhamma Center. I arrived yesterday afternoon after being about, I think, 7.5 months away. I am very, very happy to be back. And somehow even my stomach feels better after coming back. I don't know why. Anyways, now let us get to the lesson. This is page number 36.
Mandy, we should be starting on page 37.
37, okay.
Yes. Number 25, Vedana Anapana. That's where we stopped.
Okay. Right, Vedana Anapana. The contemplation of feelings. Monks. Whenever a monk trains himself thus, I will breathe in experiencing zest. When he trains himself thus, I will breathe out experiencing zest. When he trains himself thus, I will breathe experiencing joy, sukha. When he trains himself thus, I will breathe out experiencing joy. He trains himself thus, I will breathe in experiencing mental formations. When he trains himself thus, I will breathe out experiencing mental formations. When he trains himself thus, I will breathe in calm in the mental functions. Sorry, not mental formations, mental functions. When he trains himself thus, I will breathe out calming the mental functions. Then the monk, exertive, fully aware, mindful, dwells contemplating feelings in feelings, putting away covetousness and displeasure for the world. Now, when we, as we have now gone through two of the earlier sections, we've covered the four, but we are now going through it or approaching it in a different manner within the sutra. We find ourselves now sort of in discussing or in understanding the mode or the mechanism of awareness. It is very important to consider how it is that we practice that said awareness. The best example that comes to my mind at this moment is if we are to take, for example, a guard tower or a lighthouse, right? The light that would be in, that will equip a guardhouse or a light tower is something which would be very powerful, a beam of light, and it will sort of, on the regular, it will sort of turn from one side to the other and going about back and forth, isn't it? Now, the person who is operating this light does not go to the ground or to the sea that the light touches. He simply just focuses the light upon that specific location that he should focus it on. Now take that as an example for awareness. When we focus upon a certain area or a certain function or a certain element or a certain meditational object within the body, we are not to be going to the object. Rather, our position is supposed to be where? In the present. Open to see, to observe, to experience anything that arises. Do you understand? Just like that light in that tower or the guardhouse, it's not going to interact with the object. It is not going to the ground to which the light shines upon or the sea that it shines upon. It simply sheds that light. And when it does, when it illuminates that area, whatever which is in that position will be observed. Do you understand? Right? In that manner, when we say, I will breathe in experiencing zest, I will breathe out experiencing zest, that sets a certain element of observation for the meditation, not to go looking towards it, right? But to simply observe upon that element when the light shines in that respective position. For example, a guard light, certain guard lights might be focusing outside of the premises. Certain guard lights might be focusing inside of the premises. And other guard lights might be focusing on the building within the premises. In the same manner, when we say experiencing zest, always remember that man or woman or person standing there operating that light does not run to the object. He only observes that which is within the scope where the light shines. Does that make sense, everyone? Does anyone have any questions? All right. When he trains himself thus, I will breathe in experiencing joy. When he trains himself thus, I will breathe out experiencing joy. When he trains himself thus, I will breathe in experiencing the mental function. Now, what is the mental function? Did we not go over this term earlier? What is the mental function that is being spoken of here?
The formations, the sankhara.
The chitta sankhara. The chitta sankhara. And here, the use of the word sankhara. The usage of the word sankhara brings in a sense of oneness of all sankharas, dependent and conditioned in a similar manner, isn't it? Sankharas are those dhammas which has a beginning. Because it has a beginning, sankharas will always have an ending as well. Sankharas, because they have an ending, because they cease to exist after their lifespan, sankharas are not worthy of being attached to. Sankharas are not worthy of that special attention. It is simply to be observed as it arises and passes away. Sankhara. Do you understand? So whatever chitta sankhara that arises within two minds at that moment or during the span of meditation, none of these sankharas should in any way be given any special treatment regardless of your emotional attachment to the sankhara. The moment the emotional attachment to sankhara is now being given some sort of attention, now we have come out of a path that would lead to one-pointedness, rather that will disrupt the meditation. Do you understand? Chitta sankhara. Is that clear, everyone? right? So regardless of the yes, Damsere.
Bhante, some priest explain this one as Vedana and Sanya.
Vedana.
The mental function as Vedana and Sanya. And so you, how do you explain that one? Because when you say sankhara, that include all 50 chaitasikas, right? And so why some people explain this particular mental function as Vedana and Sanya only?
Yes. Vedana and Sanya are the way that we feel and caress the mental chitta sankharas.
Okay, all right, okay.
Vedana and Sanya. Now, for example, let us take a moment when a pleasurable sankhara arises, a pleasurable, very happy memory arises. We ravel and we try to grapple onto that object because it brings back good memories or it is something which is pleasurable, right? On another example, or with another example, if it is a negative emotion that arises, then we try to sort of put it away and come back to our meditation even quicker, right? Both of those experiences is because of the Vedana and Sanya. Both of those experiences arise because of Vedana and Sanya, right? Vedana and Sanya, without which they are like counterparts of consciousness itself, because without that, a consciousness will not have the standing to cultivate and develop, right? So we find ourselves attached to a certain Vedana. Or how is it that we know that this sankhara that has arisen is a good sankhara or a bad sankhara? We always know. That is because of Vedana and Sanya. That is because of Vedana. That is also why Vedana and Sanya is taken away from the sankharas and projected separately in the Panchupadanaskandha. Right? Because this forms, or this Vedana and Sanya sensations and perceptions creates a foundation through mutual conditioning for consciousness itself to arise and find its standing. Yeah. So now when we are talking about Vedananupasana, right, we will find ourselves in a position where we focus on the Vedana far more than the earlier times, right? So it is almost automatic. It is an automatic process that we would now try to measure in terms of the Vedana. That is why it is at times explained as a process that happens through Vedana, sensations, and Sanya, perception. Yeah. When we go further, right? When we go further, but that will be at the position of Dhammanupasana, the outlook of the consciousness changes to a position where we will now no longer depend on the Vedana, right? On the Vedana anymore, because that impulsive reaction does not arise. Right? That impulsive reaction will not arise. Right? What is that impulsive reaction? What is that impulsive reaction then? That is a reaction where we connect to the Vedana with, of course, the aid of Sanya before the true reality of the means, the object itself. When we go on to the position of, or when we cultivate ourselves to the position of Dhammanupasana, now the Vedana, or the data by which, the little data by which, or the scope by which we would measure the Vedanas, now are sort of surpassed with Dhammik or Prajna, to a level where now we only see the Ayatanas, Dhatu, Satya, Khanda, we only see those realities now, right? Not to say that we will not take pleasure in the simple pleasures of life, but we are not blinded by the reality of those simple pleasures. That is simply it. Does that make sense? Yeah. Any questions, anyone else? Okay, let us move on. When he trains himself thus, I will breathe out experience in the mental function, breathe out experience in the mental functions. When he, Dil, do you have a question?
Yes, Bhante. Just before, at the top of that page, now here, this is just semantics, I know, because here, normally we say, I will breathe in experiencing happiness, but they are using zest and joy for when we use piti and sukha, right? It's the same thing. Am I not right? Because earlier we used piti with zest and joy both for piti, but in this particular reference, the zest is for piti and joy is for what we would have called sukha. It's just words, but just to remember that, because all this time in the Abhidhamma books and everything, we say, piti, it's going to be joy, and then sukha, it's happiness. But in this particular thing, they say experiencing joy for what we would normally call happiness in all the other translations. So I'm just saying it because when I saw it was different, but it's just semantics only. Because we normally use the word joy for the first one, which is for piti, zest or joy. But they use joy for what we call, all this time before happiness. It's just a word, but I just want to say, otherwise you can get confused, Bhante.
Yes, I remember you mentioned.
Yes, that's what I was telling you before also, Bhante, that. And the other thing I want to say is, now this is very important when you're talking about the sanya as well as the vedana. And what Dharma was quite right, that those two is the one that causes sankhara. But I think there is a state, isn't it, where if you don't have those two, when you that is the Nirodhi Samapatti. Am I right or wrong? I may have got that. If you don't have sanya, when you get to Nirodhi Samapatti, that those two, the sanya and the vedana, the cessation of the perceptions and feelings, that's that state that you call Nirodhi Samapatti. I maybe got mixed up, but that's the way I remembered it, Bhante. So I just wanted to say whether I'm right in that or not.
Yeah, because Nirodha Samapatti is the position where consciousness ceases to exist for that man.
Yeah.
When consciousness ceases to exist, sanya and vedana will not exist.
Yeah, thank you, Bhante. I just connected, that's why I wanted to ask. Thank you very much, Bhante. Thank you.
All right. Now, when he trains himself thus, I will breathe out experience in the mental functions. When he trains himself thus, I will breathe in calming the mental functions. When he trains himself thus, I will breathe out calming the mental functions. We have gone over this in a different manner in the above section earlier, right? This is all referring to Chitta Sankhara, right? Chitta Sankhara. Whilst in the first position here, Chitta Sankhara Patisamvedi Asasissa Miti Sikkati, Chitta Sankhara Patisamvedi Pasasissa Miti Sikkati, breathing in and breathing out, right? Now here, again, let me reiterate that this is not breathing in and breathing out to see the seeds of the mental function. What we essentially do is we are still in the motions of breathing. Do you understand? Right? The Anapana Sati is still going on. Right? And whilst the process is continuing, what we are now focusing on, going through these focuses, is our mental awareness, or the acuteness of our awareness cultivates and develops. In that process, we are able to go deeper and deeper into what we can observe and understand. Here, whilst we start in breathing in and breathing out, experiencing the mental functions, right? The second part is about calming the mental functions. I think you remember that even with the breath, there was a position where we breathe in, long, breathe out, short, we then calm the breaths, right? Here, this calming process is truly about bringing it home in a way where we find further stability in the quietness of the present moment. Right? In the quietness of the present moment, where with or connecting to that peace whilst continuing our meditation, we are able to slowly, if any, be able to calm the mental functions more and more. Right? Remember, we are not going out to calm, we are going in to calm. That is very important. Because if we start going out, meaning, for example, you remember something about family, you remember something about friends, you remember different things, different sensations, and you keep on going to these different places, right? What you will find yourself in is in a position of restlessness, in a position of uddacha, restlessness. Because when you start giving heed to those functions of mind, and when you place importance upon those functions, the functions will increase. It will give you what it wants. So it will increase. Now you will find that you will have many functions to juggle or to get rid of. No, we do not go to the object. We simply rein ourselves in. Connect to the bliss and peace of that moment together with the breath, allowing us to now quiet the mind of those functions. Do you understand? Any questions, anyone? All right. Then the monk, exerted, fully aware, mindful, dwells contemplating feelings in the feelings. Feelings in the feelings. This is almost as if, right, through Vedana and Sanya, contemplating the Vedana and Sanya in the Vedana and Sanya. Do you understand? Right? Now, here, putting away covetousness and displeasure for the world, monks, full attention to in and out breathing is one of the feelings I declare. Right? Now, when we observe the breath in the breath, we can observe the breath in the breath in a way of Anapana as well. Right? In addition to the other techniques also present, in addition, right? Therefore, monks, a monk exerted, fully aware, mindful, dwells contemplating feelings in the feelings. Let us read this. Full attention, 138. Explains that full or bare attention, sadhukha mansikara, okay, is not itself actually feeling, but is spoken of as such only figuratively. In the second tetra, the actual feeling is joy mentioned in the second clause, and also the feeling connoted by the expression of mental formations in the third and the fourth clauses. Right? In the third and the fourth clauses. Now, you might have heard the word sadhukang mansikarota. Have you heard that word? Sadhukang. It is spoken of with regards to listening to Dhamma. Sadhukang mansikarota, right? Which is to pay attention. But the word sadhukang gives a sense of undivided, gives a sense of connected, gives a sense of unification of the mind and the object. Of the mind and the object. It is in these positions of awareness where almost suddenly you lose sensation and awareness and the busyness that came initially, that you lose almost instantaneously, and then all of a sudden it arises again, right? Those are positions of unification that we understand in the mind. We can relate to it in terms of experiencing different levels of samadhi itself, right? But what we then sort of see is the way that we are aware with regards to the sensations, the mental functions. With the raising of awareness, we find that the more that we become aware, one-pointed, with a sense of ekagata, samadhi now increasing, you feel it increasing, right? You find a sense, a feeling of pleasure that you derive, not in a way that you were looking for it, but simply as if, you didn't want sugar, but something had a bit of sugar in it and you taste sugar almost. Do you understand? You were not looking forward to pleasure. You didn't want it, but you got it. Do you understand? Right? You're not putting it aside. You're not doing anything with it. Simply, you're with it at that moment. That is that sense of sadhuka manasikara that they are speaking of, where you connect to that essence which is there at that moment. And as now you observe essentially the feeling of joy simply arising. But joy not in the mundane sense of joy. This is a very spiritual sense of joy that if one has not meditated, one would never understand as well, right? And you might assume, okay, I've gone to India, I've visited, it brought me such kind of joy. No, this is not that kind of joy, right? This is a whole different kind of joy, right? Only something that you will only experience through meditation, right? Why? You might ask why. It is because essentially with the getting rid or the suppression of the hindrances and the support of the ekagata and samadhi allows you to experience joy in a profoundly unworldly manner, right? And it might surprise you. It will definitely surprise you. But that joy is not anything, you can't compare it to anything really, other than the fact of spiritual joy, meditative spiritual joy to be more accurate. All right. Now, putting away covetousness and displeasure for the world. Monks, please connect to the earlier where we sort of went over these terms, yeah? In detail, we discussed. Monks, full attention to the in and out breathing is one of the feelings I declare. Therefore, monks, through attention, sadhukam manasikaram. Therefore, monks, a monk exertive, fully aware, mindful, dwells contemplating feelings in the feelings, putting away covetousness and displeasure for the world. Now, in this process of contemplating feelings in the feelings, something a little bit more extra and special also happens. Earlier, we find ourselves in a position where we live off these feelings, almost as if these feelings energize and motivate us. Now, with the bare attention that we put into the attention over or the observation of the feelings, we find ourselves slowly, we know the feelings far better than we ever did. However, the dependence upon the feelings starts reducing. Right? Why? The mind will never let go without a bigger, better, stronger branch. Right? What is this branch now? Simply the state of awareness. Simply the state of awareness. When the awareness grows, the mind, the body, the being starts to now depend or to really sort of live off that happiness that comes through that present moment awareness in comparison to that dependence that we had earlier to the mundane feeling. Does that make sense? Yeah. Putting away covetousness and displeasure for the world. Covetousness and displeasure for the world. Why? Again, the dependence on these feelings reduce with that awareness. Chittanapasana. Any questions before we move on to Chittanapasana?
Sorry, Bhante.
Yes.
Bhante, can I
Hello,
ask a
Bhante.
question? Oh, sorry.
Yeah, well, Lakshman, you can go after lettuce. Yes,
Sorry.
that's fine.
Bhante, sorry to ask you this because I don't understand. How does this sort of Vedananupasana relate to the way we do our meditation,
Yes.
in the classes?
Yeah. Well, simply, we haven't come to this Vedananupasana.
Okay, sorry. All right.
Your simple answer is that.
Okay.
Right? We haven't come to this Vedananupasana. The approach that we have taken now in the Satipatthana, what is explained is a position of breathing Anapana Sati leading on to, I mean, this is the Anapana Sati Sutra, right? This is talking about a technique. This is talking about a technique based upon Anapana, right? So we haven't essentially, we have actually started maybe about 3 weeks, maybe about a month and a half back. We've started, but we've really not gone into it as much, right? What we've started is seeing the breath in the breath,
Yes.
right? So we have to progress a bit more in order to come into this position, right? What we have been doing is Shuddha Vipassana in the beginning, right? Which is another technique, which is a different technique. Do you understand? Right? So we haven't come into this position in our meditation class as yet.
Thank you.
Yeah? Is that all, letters?
Yes, please. Yeah, thank you.
Now, but lettuce, that doesn't complete the answer, right? So let me go. Now, how does it relate? How does it relate? Now, for example, if we take the Shuddha Vipassika method, right, and if we take the Anapana Sati method, in the Anapana Sati method, we find ourselves going through a process within the Satipatthana where we would then flow from Kayanupasana to Vedananupasana to Chittanapasana. From the position of Kayanupasana, if we are following along this method, we will also be inciting or putting a lot of energy into samatha to develop that samadhi before we essentially go into the vidarshana technique, right? Into the vidarshana technique. However, after we go through, after we sort of cross the initial stages of Kayanupasana, something that we do with the Anapana Sati technique is we take the samadhi, apply to vipassana. If it doesn't work out, we go back to samadhi. Do you understand? Right? In the Shuddha Vipassaka technique, what we essentially do is we keep with vipassana. We keep with vipassana. However, if you've ever, I'm sure all of you have followed Venerable Dhammajiva's teachings, Venerable Dhammajiva will speak about the Mahasi technique. And the Mahasi technique in the Mahasi centers, I don't know if any one of you have been to Mahasi centers or done some research on the Mahasi centers. Now, Mahasi centers will focus on Shuddha Vipassana. However, the lifestyle that you have at Mahasi centers is very different from other centers. You travel very slowly. You eat very slowly. You don't talk at all, only with the teacher. Why that technique, or why that is suggested, actually not suggested, it is demanded. If you're at the center, you will not walk at your normal speed. You're supposed to reduce it at least by 3 times, right? You better leave 30 minutes before your meditation starts, because it will take you 30 minutes to walk to the hall. Because you're supposed to walk slow, right? Now, why that is simply because to reduce the chitta sankhara, in order for the vipassana samadhi to increase, going into the vipassana jhanas faster. Mind you that I said vipassana jhana, right? What I mean by that is the vipassana samadhi that can also take you into marga phala. Because before marga and phala, vipassana jhanas arise. Remember the 40 technique in Abhidhamma? The 8 and the 40. The 40 will always arise. 40 is with vipassana jhana, right? Because of the vipassana samadhi, right? So at Mahasi centers, then you have the lifestyle, and then you have the vipassana itself, right? This is to have a continuous effort put in to the practice, so that the samadhi will increase, right? So that the samadhi will increase. The lifestyle path plays a huge role in the vipassana and the attainments that one would have, right? So essentially, we have not come to this part, but what we have been doing is literally building commitment, shraddha, understanding of vipassana to cultivate a vipassana samadhi, right? A vipassana samadhi. In this technique, we will be going into, in this one, which we are doing right now in terms of reading, we are going to jhana through samadhi, and then using that samadhi to enter into vipassana. Does that make it clear for everyone? Lettuce?
Yes, thank you, Bhante.
Yeah, that is how we correlate. Now, a very important part is now, if you have a daily practice, right? If you have a daily practice, and for that time that you practice, you are sincere, absolutely sincere to that practice, even if it is for 30 minutes or an hour, with that sincerity, you will have so much of development, even if you don't do it throughout the day, right? But what is important is a daily practice 7 days a week, right? With that, you will find that through what you learn, you have to always, at the end, unify the practice. Today's meditation has to be unified with the previous day's meditation and the meditation that you're going to have tomorrow. Unification, we might sort of assume, may I compare or something? No, it's not about comparing. It's about learning. The prajna that I have today has to be supported by my experiences of yesterday. Do you understand? And my prajna that is going to arise tomorrow is being supported by the prajna today. Right? Remember, the contemplation of the khandhas, the arising, the processing, and the passing away, upadhatiti bhanga of khandhas, is the practice which the Buddha has recommended for all those who want to attain to nibbana. Right? We know that. The present moment awareness is connected through awareness on a daily basis or a moment-to-moment awareness. That moment-to-moment awareness connects our practice to an extent where the practice right now is enforced and reinforced by the experience of the past. This emphasizes upon the importance of mansikara, or the mansikara at the end, rather called recollection. No, what's the word? What we do at the end? Yeah, recollection.
Recollection.
Recollection. That recollection, I think I've been telling you so many times, that recollection is so important. So important. Right? And don't you worry about not being able to go beyond an hour. Just simply have or be sincere to the practice that you have, whether it be 30 minutes or 1 hour. Simply have that sense of sincerity towards that practice, and you will find with recollection at the end, you will grow day to day. Right? And make sure that you have learned something through the recollection at the end of the meditation. Do you understand?
Bhante, can I ask something, please, Bhante?
Yeah.
Bhante, now this word recollection, sometimes you say review as well. What I want to ask is that the same as the vimamsa that you get in the Iddhipada? Because it's recollection and review, right? Now, even Ajahn Amar always says that it's so important at the end of the day that we do this recollection and review. So when you have, so my question is that I understand. My question is that the same as the because he attributes this recollection and review to this vimamsa. So I just want to know what you feel about that. So in the Iddhipadas, you have Chanda, and then you have Virya, and then you have Chitta, and that vimamsa.
Now, vimamsa, the recollection is a part and parts of vimamsa.
Right. Thank you. Thank you, Bhante.
Is simply the power of wisdom, right?
Yes.
This aspect of recollection is a part or falls into vimamsa as well.
Yeah. Thank you, Bhante.
All right, Lakshman?
Yes, Bhante, it's a simple question, but I don't understand what's meant by contemplating feelings in the feelings.
Okay. All right, Lakshman. Right. Now, when we at the position where we observe, for example, if we draw inspiration from the earlier time that something dissimilar was repeated, right? Where's feelings in feelings? Right here. Was the breath in the breath, the body of the breath in the body, right? What is the contemplation of feelings in feelings? When we observe the feelings, the sensations, right? The sensations from gross sensations, it would cultivate to find a more subtle sensations in a constant cycle of arising and passing away. When we go through that initial phase of the sensation where we might sort of observe gross numbness, all of that, at this position, we would have gone beyond those pieces of experience at this position. Right? And what we would be experiencing at this position is that constant sort of arising and passing away of different sensations all across the body, energy, lightning strikes, and spiders, all of that across the body in terms of sensations. The pulsating beat of the heart, the pounding of the heart, the pumping of the blood all across the veins, all of these things. The body will now seemingly be in constant movement, while before you might have never realized this about the body, right? Now, this is the type of experience that you would have in this sort of a position in your meditation. So now, how do we contemplate Vedana in Vedana? Here, with the heightening of focus, with the subduing of the hindrances, we are able to now remove ourselves from the equation of Vedana and be able to see the truer aspects of Vedana in the body of the Vedana that arises. In the body of the Vedana that arises. Again, going back to our breath example. Breathing in, breathing out. Started at the nostrils, found our way to the chest and maybe the abdomen, focused upon the chest and the abdomen, continued our practice for a couple of weeks, now became, or I am able to observe the breath, not observing the movement, but literally observe the breath through the expansion and the contraction of the body, not localized, but more general. Makes sense, right? That is the body of the breath in the body, right? What essentially has happened there is we've taken, or we've been successfully taking away the self aspect away from the breath to observe the breath, not completely away from the self, but somewhat away from the self. Now seeing the breath, being able to see the expansion and the motions of the breath and the reactions that the breath causes, right? In the Vedana, in the same way, initially the Vedana of the pain that was felt was pain that I felt. The pleasure that was felt was pleasure that I felt, right? The pain when experienced, I wanted to get away from the pain. When I experienced pleasure, I want to embrace that pleasure even more, right? That was with self. Now, in Vedana, in the Vedana, that self-being aspect removes itself, where now we are able to see the arising and the passing away of the Vedana, but not the self. You understand? Earlier, take yourself back. Earlier, let's say, for example, the knee pain or the pain in the shoulders. The Vedana was most often observed by a measure of how you felt about the Vedana. Wasn't it so? Right? How you felt about the Vedana, or what your Vedana was towards the Vedana was your Vedana, right? If that makes sense. Now, the measure of the Vedana, self being separated from it, you observe now the Vedana for the Vedana rather than the self-oriented Vedana. You understand? Now, the pain, the negative aspect of the Vedana or the positive aspect of the Vedana is no longer taken by way of self, but as the body of the Vedana arising and passing away. Do you understand? The being almost disappearing, what is left over, just like, for example, Anapana Sati, when the body disappeared, sensation disappeared, but all you knew was this motion, not even movement, but simply just motion, right? In the same way, now what you observe is not motion, is not movement, is not hardness or softness, it's simply Vedana. Detached from self. Vedana without self. Do you understand? I won't say, I must correct myself. Detached to a certain extent from self. The clarity that you have of Vedana in being able to see the nude, if I might put it in this way, the nude form of Vedana. Because truly, how we see Vedana is actually through, again, as Dhamsri also mentioned, Sanya and Vedana. Right? It is through Sanya and Vedana. I mean, Vedana is a Chetasika which is the sensation itself, but it is through these. And remember, in the Panchaskandha, we have Sanya and Vedana, right? But we have Sankhara and Rupa, Vedana, Sanya, Sankhara, Vinyana. What is the reason for Sankhara to be separated to the Vedana and the Sanya? This is because the Vedana and the Sanya forms an identity, the self. Panchaskandha, Pancha Upadanaskandha, Panchaskandhe kerehi tiben alima or aliming Panchaskandhe arumunak vashen ganීමෙන් තමයි Pancha Upadanaskandhය හැදෙන්නේ. ඒ ඇලීමම තමයි මමත්වය මේ සකසඤ්ඤාව. The self aspect, the sakasanya, that there is something called me, myself, and I. Identity is built specifically, built in capital through Rupa, Sanya, Vedana, Sankhara, Vinyana. Identity is built on this. That is why when we experience Vedana, we experience it through the way we define that experience. Through the way I define that experience. Through the, right? In this position, when the self detaches or we are able to let go of the hold of self upon our interpretation of Vedana, now we are able to see the body of Vedana within the Vedana. Does that make sense?
Yes, Bhante, thank you. Thank you.
Yes, Lakshman. Yes.
Bhante, can I ask you one thing, please, Bhante?
Yeah.
So, Bhante, am I right? Please correct me. So in the first instance, when you were looking, when you're doing Anapana Sati, and when we were thinking about the body of the breath, right? Body in the body of the breath, there you are looking at the motion, right? But there was still the Sakasanya, there was still a person who was looking at it. Now, when you have moved into this stage, that because it is more unitive, because that there is no Sakasanya looking at it, because it is much more unitive, and you have taken the self away. So you are actually experiencing the Vedana in the Vedana. Am I right in saying that, Bhante? Is that the way you explain it to us? Have I understood correctly?
Well, yes, that is the way I said it.
Yeah, thank you, Bhante.
Okay. All right. Now, Shriyani, yes.
Bhante, with Anapanasati Bhamana, when you do that, the sense, the touch, that air that touches the nose, that also you can see as Vedana?
You can, doesn't mean you should.
Yeah, we should. Yes, we can. Because you can use that as a form of Vedana as well, to let go the Vedana.
Look. Now, when you look at the Anapanasati Sutra, the Anapanasati Sutra is a methodical, systematical approach to an approach which ends with Dhammanupasana, which is the path and fruit attainment. Right. In every way of practice, there is a method. So it truly depends. Yes, this might say something. Now, remember, this is 30 odd pages after the start of the sutra, or maybe 15 pages from the start of the sutra, right? And this is in the second, this is in Anapanasati. Remember not to take this bit only and apply to another technique, right? There are 1,000 odd ways, literally 1,000 ways, which can be taken out of the Satipatthana Sutra. But remember that those 1,000 ways applied or should be applied with a sense of method, right? We can't take this bit and apply it there, right? What would essentially happen, for example, let's say a person starts practicing Anapanasati and then starts seeing the sensations at the early stage of Anapanasati without essentially cultivating Samadhi. For example, Samadhi, which has already been spoken in this sutra earlier. What would happen is now the person would Vedanava follow Karala, the person will now start following the motion of the breath. When the person starts following the motion of the breath, Anapanasati has now failed. The more that you start following motions of the breath, you will now start experiencing respiratory issues, which will lead to pains around the chest. When you experience pains around the chest, then what will happen is acute pains will happen and then you will be turned off from the meditation. Something that happened to Venerable Balangoda Ananda Maitri Thero is he couldn't shift back to the he couldn't shift from voluntary breathing to involuntary breathing again, right? And the famous story which goes where he had to keep his nose on a Swami's nose and meditate with the Swami is to correct his breathing. Right? Remember, this position or this moment where now they would talk about Vedana with Anapana has come after Samadhi has been induced.
Yeah, yeah. Okay.
Right? So
Yeah, yeah.
pick parts from the middle and then try to apply it. It will not work like that.
Okay.
Right? It will not. Yes, you can observe sensations in Anapanasati, but with some consideration of the position or the position of development.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you, Bhante.
Anyone else? Okay. Right. Now, therefore, monks. We read this part, didn't we? Yes, we did. Chittanapasana. Monks. Whenever a monk trains himself thus, I will breathe in experience in the mind. When he trains himself thus, I will breathe out experience in the mind. When he trains himself thus, I will breathe in gladdening the mind. When he trains himself thus, I will breathe out gladdening the mind. When he trains himself thus, I will breathe in concentrating the mind. When he trains himself thus, I will breathe out concentrating the mind. When he trains himself thus, I will breathe in freeing the mind. When he trains himself thus, I will breathe out freeing the mind. Right. Now, here we find ourselves again, right? Chitta patisambedi assa sissameti sikkati. I will breathe in experiencing the mind. The breathing in experience in the mind, the breathing in Anapanasati is always used like an anchor is used by a ship. It is an anchor that we place, and it is always used as an anchor, right? When he trains himself thus, Chitta patisambedi passa sissameti sikkati, I will breathe out experiencing the mind, right? With the breath, breathing in and breathing out, experience the mind. You might remember even in our meditation, sometimes I would say, if the mind wanders, use the breath to bring the mind back to the object, right? This is literally using the breath as a trigger to go into the object and to bring the mind back from wherever it has distracted itself with, or to rather. When he trains himself thus, I will breathe in, gladdening the mind. This is speaking of the Vedana associated with the observation of the mind. Now, just because I use the word Vedana, do not confuse yourself with the earlier section. Here, this is the Vedana arising in relation to the leeway or the headway made in Chittanapasana in observing the breath. I'm sorry, in observing the mind. In observing Chitta Sankhara, the headway made in observing Chitta Sankhara is what we are now observing. And when we now make headway in that process, the gladdening, this is referring to the Vedana connected to that observation process. Is that clear? I feel like it's not.
Bhante, gladdening the mind. I'm confused. I will breathe in, gladdening the mind. What do you mean by that?
So, to put it again, let me repeat.
Yeah.
Right. When we make good progress in our meditation,
Yeah.
good progress in our meditation, we feel a sense of happiness.
Mm-hmm.
Right? This happiness is also not like the normal happiness, but we derive a sense of satisfaction.
Yeah.
Right? With the mind or with the experiencing of the mind as the mind is, or just simply the way the mind is, now with that change of focus, when you make good progress or progress in your stream of observation, that develops a sense of a Vedana, really. It's simply a Vedana. Now, mind you, I feel like I'm wrong in using the word Vedana, but then when I think about it, I know that it's not wrong, because at the end of the day, Vedana is a mind-born element, right, which connotes a certain feeling to that experience.
Something like pain, I thought.
Sorry?
Vedana. Something like pain. Pain.
No, Vedana is
No.
not. That is Sinhala. This is Pali.
Yeah, I always do that same mistake. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
Bhante, it's okay. Yeah.
Right. So when we are able to make that progress, now we derive a sense of satisfaction, known as here gladdening the mind. Right? When the mind connects in or through observation to the mind, that process of awareness creates a pleasant sensation, which we in turn use to go deeper into the mind. Right? That everyone, going deeper into the mind, is this part here. When he trains himself thus, I will breathe in, concentrating the mind. Do you understand? Right? First, breathing in, experience in the mind. Whatever is found in the mind. Breathing out, experience in the mind. Now, when we make progress or we are able to experience the mind, we derive that sense of satisfaction. We use that satisfaction, right, to go deeper. Up until now, we are able, or we know how to use it to deepen concentration. Do you understand? Is that clear? Right? In every part of this, right? Remember that this comes after Vedananupasana and after Kayanupasana. Right? So good progress has already been made to allow the person to observe chitta, the mind, without the frailties that we would experience as new meditators, where we've been distracted and all of this, right? Now, with every part, we are putting ourselves into a process where we are able to understand how to further remove the self from the mind. Right? Remove the self from the mind. මමත්වය කියන දේ ඈත් වෙන්න මනසේ තියෙන සමාධිමත් ගතිය වැඩි වෙන එක විතරයි වෙන්නේ. ඒ සමාධිය කියන දේ ඕන පැත්තකට වැඩි වෙන්න පුළුවන්. අපිට අවශ්‍ය සමාධිය නිවන කෙරෙහි වැඩි කරා ගන්න. Right? That is why, to keep the mind connected to the path, why we use this gladdening part here.
Interesting.
Right? Because remember, the sense of samadhi, we have Miccha Samadhi, we call it Miccha Samadhi not because there's anything wrong with it. While we are studying, when we are working, when we are running, when we are at the gym, when we are doing something around the house, we have a sense of concentration. It is not to say we don't have any concentration. But what we require and need is a concentration that would allow us to draw ourselves deep or to cultivate the enlightenment factors. Right? The enlightenment factors. And this is through truly connecting. We did it first through connecting with bodily movements through Chittanapasana. We did it after by connecting through Vedananupasana and removing the self there. Now we are connecting again or trying out the process of mind through Chitta to remove that sense of self, to observe without self. Do you understand? Is that clear? Yeah. Now, at this position, everyone, right, you might want to, maybe you might experience nimittas at this point. Nimittas would have already arisen with Chittanapasana, with Vedananupasana, right? Nimittas would have already arisen, right? But before we go there, Samantha, yes, Samantha.
Yeah, Bhante. I'm just wondering, so does that mean that, I was a bit confused when it says, I will breathe that in and out, glad in the mind and concentrating the mind and out, in and out, all that stuff. Because I thought at this stage, the breath has disappeared and, so you just got what you're aware is just the mind. Is would that, and you're just awareness of the mind and that's it. You're not breathing, you don't have any, the breathing in and out is all gone. You can't feel the breath, the body or anything. So it's just the mind on its own. And I presume you can't even hear. There won't be a sense of hearing here either. So you're just being with the mind and watching the mind watching the mind sort of thing.
Yes, the hearing, the sensations, they will come and go. And in this position, most likely the hearing sensations will not be there. But remember, although you're not breathing, although you might not feel the gross breath, connect to a finer breath, right? You connect to a finer breath which you know is there.
Yeah.
Right? You are not sort of mistaking yourself to believe that the breath no longer exists or that you're not breathing.
No, because you'd be dead otherwise, isn't it?
Exactly.
Yeah.
But there are, for example, certain meditations, for example, like the Arupa Samapattis, where you literally stop breathing.
Oh.
Yes. Now, those are in the Arupa meditations, but not here.
No.
Right? Not here. Actually, more than stopping the breathing process is far elongated, where you won't need to breathe for a longer time. Right? So regardless, in this position, although you might not be feeling the breath, does not mean that you will not see the breath. And that initial experience of remember the breath disappearing, right? When the mind attributes or comes to the same level or sort of balances with that experience, you will be able, or you know the breath exists, yet you are able to go through. But the focus is not upon the breath. You are using the breath tool to experience these other parts.
The mind, and that will probably give you a little bit of confidence, because then you know that you're not dead, so that you are in the background. Hopefully not, and in the back, you know you can just get on with it because you're still alive, sort of thing. Put it sort of like not very nicely, but
Well, I don't know what to say to that, Samantha.
Okay. Thank you, Bhante.
Bhante, will it be in the one-pointed stage by this time?
One-pointedness?
Yes.
Probably yes, right? There is a great potential for a deep sense of one-pointedness at this stage, yes.
Thank you, Bhante.
Yeah, right. Because here, in experience in the mind, what we essentially connect to is far more different from the basic Chittanapasana that we have essentially done. Because we have gone through the Kayanapasana and the Vedanapasana also by this time. So there is a deep sense of one-pointedness, and that one-pointedness is a production of, or something that is manifested by wisdom.
Yes, understand.
And because that wisdom, in no way are we deluded to think that we are not breathing. We are very much aware and in tune with the breathing. Right? Remember that initial experience where the breath disappeared. We were not in tune. Hence, what happened? We got excited and we broke the meditation, broke out the meditation. But at this moment, you can feel that subtlety in a far more subtle and finer fashion in comparison to the earlier stages that we experienced. Yeah?
Yeah, okay. Thank you, Bhante.
Oh, Bhante, can I just quickly ask, at this stage, when you're experiencing the mind, I'm just wondering what exactly that is. I mean, is that something that we have to experience and then find out ourselves? What do we see in the mind?
Well, you will assess the essence of the 82, 89 chittas, and the 52 chaitasikas, the essence.
Oh. What does that mean? I mean, I was just wondering, do you see Vedana, Sanya, Sankhara arising, passing, flashing in front of you, or is it like some sort of experience? Do you actually, I don't know, do you see like a film? So, well, not a film, so objects coming and going, and that's sort of, I'm just imagining.
At this position, what you will, if you are thinking in terms of a vision or a nimitta, it will not be so.
No.
The mind will be turned, or the focus of the mind will be relating to the mind.
Yeah.
What you will feel is when you observe something and you know something with clarity, in terms of what has been experienced with regards to the mind, you will watch the processes essentially. Right? The processes, and receive an understanding or an insight into those intricate processes of the mind. Right? Intricate processes of the mind. For example, let us say impermanence.
Yeah.
Right? Impermanence. And when we observe that sense of impermanence, there are those aha moments, isn't it? Right? So it is a series of those aha moments in terms of insight through observation, through balance. Right? But the thing is, we speak about these sort of aha insight moments, but the only way that we arrive at those positions is to not expect, is to not want, but simply to be.
Mm.
Right? So this process, even with the mind now focused or tuned towards the mind, what we learn effectively is to be rather than doing, and with the being to experience and learn through that being experience with the mind. Does
Mm.
that make sense?
Yes. So it's just like an experience. Yeah. Yeah. Because at first I was wondering whether it's like a black hole or something, but yeah, but it's being there, just experiencing. Yeah.
Visuals can also be present, Samantha.
Sorry, what is it?
Visuals can
Mm.
also be present
Mm.
in
When is it visuals? What do you mean? Visuals like? Oh, nimitters and that sort of thing, you mean?
not only nimitters, not only nimitters, but there are certain visuals which will arise in relation to when the hindrances are suppressing or being suppressed. There are certain visuals that can come to be. However, regardless of whatever visual which is, the meditator's duty is to do what the meditator should be doing, which is these parts,
Mm. Yeah, yeah.
right?
Mm.
That will be, so the visuals are just a sign that you might be arriving at certain positions during the meditation, but it is through these parts that you continue your progress.
Mm.
Do you understand?
Yes, yeah,
Huh?
yeah. I mean, would the defilements arise to the surface?
Yes, they would.
They would, yeah.
They would.
Mm.
Defilement will also arise
Mm.
in terms of, let's say, um, issues with your stomach,
Mm.
diarrhea, headaches, movements of the body, twitching of the eye, and twitching of certain muscles around the body. All of these things can arise, right? But it will sort of have an outlet. Every person will have a certain outlet, right? For some, it doesn't arise at all as well.
Mm.
And for some, nothing arises of the sort. For some, it arises and it often has an outlet. For example, twitching of the eye, a certain movement across the face,
Mm.
a movement of the hand or the leg, often suggestive of the lack of samadhi or samatha samadhi.
Mm.
If those movements are some movement that can be of damage to the body, then it's always better to return to a bit of samadhi and then go back to the insight meditation, which then cures it.
Mm. Yeah. Thank you, Bhante. Thank you.
All right. Anuma, you had a question? Can't hear you, Anuma.
Yeah.
Yes, I can hear you now.
Yeah, sorry, Bhante, sorry about it. No, I'm a bit confused with I will breathe in gladdening. The word gladdening, does it mean that you are satisfied or you're happy with your practice? You have come to a certain level of happiness, means that you are happy with your practice. If so, it might develop to an attachment. Is there a possibility to develop? Yeah, Bhante?
Yeah, when we say gladdening of the mind, it refers to a very innocent type of kusala chitta that is derived through meditational progress. It is a kusala chitta. Hey, if the gladdening was a position of focus earlier in the practice, it could have very easily turned into attachment. But at this position, our minds have or are equipped with the skill of awareness and samadhi. And because of that protects and sort of gives us a sense of protection from the mind going into or attaching, clinging onto these elements with attachment.
Mhm.
මේක බොහොම පිරිසුදු අහිංසක කුසලගාමී සිතක්.
Yeah.
Right? Because of this mind, the only thing that you would want to do with this mind, or what this mind further motivates you to do, is simple: to meditate. Do you understand?
Yes, Bhante, now it's clear. Thank you so much, Bhante. I was just wondering about it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, Bhante.
Because that earlier, when the spur and the piti was experienced earlier, there is a high risk that the attachment can come in, that the mana can come in, right? At this position, it is not so because of the high level of samadhi, but always it's very important to check yourself, which we do,
Yes.
right?
Right, Bhante.
Right? And something which is very risky is, of course, when we are living, or it is easy to, this saying that goes, it's I will not say that saying is rude. Amidst people who do not meditate, meditating might seem like a very noble, a very respectable thing.
Mhm.
You understand?
Yeah, Bhante.
Right? So it is very risky in terms of sharing our meditational experiences and sharing it. We would want to bring claim to ourselves. This would be a clear violation of the spirit of vipassana, which will break your samadhi. Right? Now, for example, in the Aranyas, we would always, the monks, our teachers would not have time to give us on a face-to-face basis, right? And we would always know there would always be a monk who is far more advanced than us, right? And we're right at the top. If you take not the senior, not in terms of seniority, because you can't measure meditational attainment through seniority. But if you would take the monks who were right on the top, meaning the Sotapannas, the Anagami monks, if you take those kinds of monks, you would find that they are completely different beings. They don't think like us, right? They don't think like that. I remember one of these monks who was taking Hamatana for Sakurdagami. He would always be on top of the Dhanasala, on a hill on top of the Dhanasala with his sort of, that piece of cloth that we just wear over the bodies without the robes. And he was just, he would always just be sweeping, or, he would smile at the monks passing by. Right? Like very normal, very down to earth, very sort of connected with reality is the only way that I could put it.
Yeah, Bhante.
So we, in the Aranyas, we have, we don't feel a sense of sort of manya when it comes to sharing what we might be going through, because we know there are monks far more advanced than us.
Exactly.
So when you're sharing, especially within a community, when we live within a community of people who do not meditate, it is very important to check ourselves and realize, why am I speaking? Why am I speaking? Am I speaking to make known that I know something? Am I speaking to make known of my meditational superiority? Am I trying to make known that I meditate and I try to? Because if you are, that will break your meditation. You will not develop. Right? So that is a position. When we come to these sort of positions that we are reading right now in terms of Chittanapasana, remember, we will be different people at the time. Right?
Yeah.
We will be different people. Right? And because of that, the way that we would interpret and understand realities in terms of our meditation or anything that we observe will be entirely different as well. Will be entirely different as well. Right?
It takes time. Yeah.
I would say, does it take time with committed practice, with sincerity? I would say, it really depends. That is where this sort of, that is where prajna really comes into play, right? Because prajna is that flare, is the cheda, right? The sword that cuts the past and the present, right? Prajna is the key. right? What we are struggling with is this, right? Maybe you can also relate to this in a way that we struggle between Dhammic reality and mundane reality. What we struggle with is the acceptance of Paramatta Satya and Sammuti.
And Satya.
Right? Mekath ඕන අරකත් ඕන. මේක ගත්තොත් අරක බෑ. පංචශීල ආරක්ෂා කරන්න ඕන රැට වයින් ග්ලාස් එකක් තිබ්බත් හොඳයි.
No.
I mean, we find ourselves, I mean, not just the wine, but we always find ourselves, you know, in a struggle between what should I accept? And that is truly the greatest struggle for anyone upon this or trying to tread upon this spiritual path. What is most important? The moment we are able to, through our meditation, through our Dhammic learning, through contemplation and awareness, if we are able to truly sort of put the state where it should be put, right? To be able to, yes, of course, perform the duties, but not be deluded by the reality of these, then we might be able to make far more better progress, easy and quicker than we would anticipate. Right now, I mentioned this story earlier. You know, my first retreat, when I was not talking to anyone, when I was not doing anything other than sort of meditating 4:30 to 9:30, 10 o'clock in the night, I made no progress. I was struggling. I was in the same place for 2 months. But the moment I relaxed, the moment I started enjoying myself, the moment I started sort of enjoying the practice and finding a more, I mean, literally stop being militant, that is when within me, I would be able to longer experience such profound experiences, right? And through weeks, whilst I wasted months in trying to sort of being militant and all of that. Right?
So choosing the middle path, isn't it, Bhante? Kind of, yeah.
Going in middle path, because we know that the middle path is essentially middle.
Yeah, yes, yes, Bhante. But anyway, you have to balance yourself, isn't it? It's kind of, yeah.
I think enjoying the practice, enjoying what you do, because remember, with this gladdening of mind, it also speaks of an element even with jhana, vitaka, vichara, piti, sukha. Piti, sukha, these are like chewing gums, you see. It gets the mind to keep on biting, right? When you let go, the niramisa sukha, right? Things like niramisa sukha, or the sukha which comes through letting go, the sukha that comes through keeping to the precept, the sukha that comes through association of kalyana mitras. Now these are things. What is this? What is this sapper, right? These are things which keeps us in the path, motivated in the path, and fixes us upon a specific goal. We must make use of those sappers or sukkahs in a way that they will motivate us further into Nibbana, right? Associating people who are able to let go, who could motivate us to let go, right? Associating people who are Dhammic, who would sort of keep to the Dhamma, and sort of drawing that sense of happiness through the meditation sitting. All of these things, there is a sukha which comes, making use of that sukha to now motivate us into the path. That is very important. That is very important. Because if we are trying to do it very militantly, in a way that you think you can go with your own force, you cannot. You cannot. Why? Because this is something like trying to fly over the stratosphere. I mean, far more than the stratosphere, because it's like flying out of samsara itself. Right? So literally energizing yourself, right? Again and again and again and again and again. Right? The Brahmins taught this in a different manner. Drawing motivation from food through or not autism, what am I saying? Austeric practices. Through austeric practices, right? Through food, through austeric practices, through the sun, the moon, sun eating, moon eating, right? These were practices that the Brahmins, the ancient Brahmins, used to preserve and develop more energy. The Buddha developed a way or taught us a way that we can gain energy beyond the body. And that was through the focus of Niramasa Sukha. හොඳ දේවල් කරනට යම් කිසි සතුටක් එනවා. ඒ සතුට අපි නිවන් මාර්ගයට උපකාර වෙන්න විදියට පාරමිතා. Right? හොඳ දෙයක් කරාම, භාවනා කරාම, සීලයක් රැක්කම, ධර්ම පොතක් කියවම, ධර්ම දේශනාවක් හැව්වම මේ හැමතැනම යම් කිසි සැපයක් සුඛයක් එනවා. ඒ සැපේ සුඛය අපි පාවිච්චි කරනවා නිවනට. ඒකට තමයි පාරමිතාව කියලා කියන්නේ. Remember, one of the elements of paramita is if you don't determine, it is not paramita. Right? Meaning, if you're just doing it does not make it a paramita. It's not going to aid you in nirvana if you just do it. It might help you in the cycle of rebirth and make you richer, give you good friends. Yes, of course, but the good friends are not going to specifically be there to enlighten you or to help you or support you towards enlightenment. Paramita only happens when you determine it to be now instrumental in your path towards nirvana. That is how sukha is now absorbed into the element, the enlightenment path. That is what we request. Then perfections. Through the perfections we find, the more that we perform these acts of perfections, the course of our life changes in a way that the earlier focus on the dependence of mundane happiness now switches to a far more supramundane based, noble, value-based happiness. That is what we try to convert ourselves. That is the truest conversion, where we now take up a life that is noble and that will lead towards that truest form of nobility. Arya Bhava. Does that make sense?
Yes, Bhante, thank you so much. Thank you very much, Bhante.
Thank you for that question. And thank you, everyone. It is 8:34 now, so I've taken 2 minutes beyond the love time. All right, so I will see you all in tomorrow's meditation. Right, and we'll pick up from where we left off next week. Okay.
Thank you, Bhante. Thank you very much.
Bhante.
Good night.
Good night. Thank you.